All right, thank you for that reviving music on a Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. Welcome. Come on in. Hi. Yeah, it's good.
Crushing it.
It's all good. We know what time it is. So welcome everyone. This session is called Reimagining Energy as a Tool for Liberation. My name is Candice Fortin. I'm the U.S. Campaigns Manager at the Global Climate Justice Organization, 350.org. And a bit about our session today. As we fight for racial, social, and economic and environmental justice, and as those fights are reaching a boiling point all over the U.S., a critical element is absent. A balanced energy system that nourishes our bodies, supports mutual aid, and keeps the lights on. Luckily, a growing movement that acknowledges energy as a liberatory tool is being led by communities across the country. Despite top-down corporate control and constant waves of white supremacy, communities from Alaska to Puerto Rico are discovering new ways to pull back the curtain on the ongoing oppression that blocks communities' resilience, safety, and health. We will share examples of how energy can be shared as a resource for justice, and we would invite you to join us in a narrative around energy as a tool for liberation. So on our panel today, we have Joe Banner, who is the co-founder and director of the Descendants Project, Crystal Huang, who is the co-founder and worker member of the People Power Solar Cooperative. Joining us remotely, and much gratitude, we have Ruth Santiago, who is the lawyer and environmental health advocate based in Puerto Rico, and Mariel, who is the executive director of the New Energy Economy. So I think we can just start with like a round of folks just giving a bit about their background and the work that they are currently doing towards energy democracy. So we can start with you, Joe.
Hi, good morning. I'm Joe Banner. I'm filling in for my sister Joy, who was supposed to be here, but her puppy got sick. He's doing better right now, we thought it best that she stay home and I switch. But that being said, my name is Joe Banner. I'm one of the co-founders and co-directors of the Descendants Project. We're a nonprofit organization based in Louisiana, an area about an hour away from New Orleans in St. John the Baptist Parish. Our organization works to acknowledge the contributions of the enslaved Africans who we all descend from, preserving the culture and the history of our ancestors. At the same time, we as descendants recognize the vulnerability we have because of the system of enslavement, and that vulnerability is really connected to the plantations, to petrochemical through line. So our area is also known, unfortunately, as Cancer Alley. A lot of the residents we're all exposed to about 7 times the risk of cancer than the average citizen. So we also fight the environmental justice front, preserving our history at the same time making sure that we have new economies that aren't relying on the decimation of our communities.
I guess I'm next. Hi, good morning everyone. Crystal Huang here. I use any pronouns. I'm with the People Power Solar Cooperative based in California. And I personally actually come from the renewable energy industry. I spent most of my career before doing energy democracy work, working in the solar industry from manufacturing solar panels all the way to supporting startups that try to create innovation around the solar industry. Everything is around, yes, clean energy can save us, we need to get everyone on board. And the more I'm deep into it, the more I realize that this is a lie that we're in that's not going to get us out of climate change. If we always believe that clean energy is going to save us and that's it. We have to be rooted in the societal shift of the social and economic orientation of how we relate to energy. And that is what got me into finding energy democracy through the local Clean Energy Alliance in California. And from there, I had the privilege of being invited to start creating ideas on how do we actually get community ownership of renewable energy to work in the state of California that's supposed to be very progressive and very environmental and very climate forward. Only to realize that, oh my goodness, California is one of the many, many states that do not allow community ownership of solar, or let alone community solar, even if it's small corporate ownership. And the more we look at it, the more we realize that the clean energy transition right now is not actually enabling us to shape what that future look like, but really it's making people who have the capital to be included in the transition of this technology-driven green capitalism, just to make the billionaires richer, or the millionaires become billionaires. So how do we actually shape our energy future is the mission, or the question that we've been thinking about at the People Power Solar Cooperative. So we exist with the mission to create a just and inclusive transition to renewable energy by enabling everyone to own and shape our energy future, and that is what we do.
Thank you, and we'll pass it to Ruth Santiago.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Hope everyone is doing well. My name is Ruth Santiago. I'm a community and environmental lawyer based in Salinas, Puerto Rico, southeastern Puerto Rico, which is the site of the largest electrical complex in Puerto Rico, also adjacent to the town of Guayama, where the AES coal-fired power plant is located. And so between the two of them, the two most polluting sources of energy in Puerto Rico. In response to the overburdening that the communities, especially in Salinas and Guayama, largely Afro-descendant communities here, have experienced over decades, even before the power complexes, the sugarcane industry, monoculture, and all of that history. We have helped to organize the efforts to transform our electric system, co-founded a civil society proposal called We Want Sun here in Puerto Rico. I guess many people have heard about the hurricanes that have struck Puerto Rico, especially lately, Hurricane Maria, but even a couple of years ago, Hurricane Fiona took down the entire electric system here, and the outages were very prolonged and, of course, cost lives. And so we're part of movements that seek to transform the electric system in a way that serves the public interest. And we're promoting and facilitating community-based rooftop solar programs and projects, but also energy literacy and efforts to make our electric system much more democratic and allow for community participation in a very proactive way. So I'll leave it there for the time being.
Thank you, and I'll pass it to Mariel Nanasi.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I hope that you can hear me.
Yes.
I use she, her pronouns. I am currently on Tewa territory, and I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I am the executive director of a nonprofit environmental justice organization called New Energy Economy. And we have a two-pronged strategy. So on the one hand, we take on the man, we fight the utilities in court and on the street, both. And so we believe in that sort of marriage of grassroots activism combined with policy work and also legal strategies. And so we have won an $8 billion, defeated an $8 billion merger that was tried by a greenwashing corporation named Avangrid, and we can talk about that a little bit later, that wanted to come in and buy our electric monopoly utility. And we were the only ones who stood up and said, no, that's not going to be good for the people. And we won against all odds. And then the other thing, and we've done a lot of other work, stopping an LNG facility just recently this year, won that in Albuquerque, our largest populated city. But then the other thing that we do is we work on our Sol for All. 10 years ago, we had a Sol for All program, way before the IRA had some little policies like that. And what we've done is really worked on community-based solutions for solar. So we're exposing the vision of what's possible and fighting the violence of the corporations.
Thank you. Question, and whoever wants to take it first, is what does liberation and energy justice look like for you? It can be in your imagination, it can be something that doesn't exist right now. Big thinking, big picture, what does liberation and energy justice look like?
I'm happy to go.
Yeah.
I'm happy to go. So, as you know, we are a cooperative. We're a cooperative corporation in the state of California. And so when we're recruiting members to join the cooperative, we tend to say, come, you can get to own energy and shape our energy future. One of the most common questions we get two very common questions. Number one is, what is energy? How do you own and shape something that you don't understand? And people don't even know how to ask that question. So the more we engage with our members and their community, the more we realize that our understanding of energy is pigeonholing us into our ability to shape a future. It's very similar to our relationship with money. If you have trauma with money in the past, you're not going to be able to know how to use money as a way to actually create wealth for yourself and your community. Same thing with energy. And surprise, surprise, energy and the economy and money are very, very intricately linked together. So that's just the first thing that we realize. The second thing we realize is, what does ownership even mean? What does it mean to join a cooperative? Because we're a multi-stakeholder cooperative. I'm a worker member. We also have general member, subscriber member who purchase electricity from us, and also anchor member who do all the organizing work and start projects and things like that. And so people have this question of like, what does ownership even mean when we don't actually we're not selling like actual tangible product, because we're trying to change, we're trying to build a movement. So questions about ownership, questions about energy get us into realizing, oh my goodness, for the last more than 100 years, we have been told that just pay your bills and don't worry about what's happening in the back end about energy. And when the power shuts off, oh, the company tried their best and now you have to pay for it, even though you pay your bills on time. And so we realize that when we're in a relationship with energy just as a consumer, and the best we can do is, what is the cleaner energy that I can buy, then we are continuing to be in this economy that our power is just to work, to make money, and to spend money, but not to actually shape the future of energy, our economy, and our society. So the liberation and the energy justice looks like to us is to be able to understand energy in a much bigger way, to understand that energy is the life and labor of the living system. I'll say that again. Energy to us, and I'll quote, this is from Movement Generation, is the life and labor of the living system. Thinking about what the sun does, how it interacts with the soil, with the plant, that creates the oxygen that we breathe today, that allow us to exist in this living world, with plants and animals that we eat, to creating fossil fuel that we burn, or creating these minerals that's in the ground. All of this web of relationship that's happening on planet Earth is energy. And we have to understand this interrelated relationship with energy in order for us to dream into the future of what beyond extraction actually looks like. So for us, an energy justice is about a lot of popular education to get our members and our communities to really reimagine our relationship with energy, actually starting by understanding what our current relationship with energy looks like, and then start building projects that goes from responding to disaster when the power shutoff happens because of wildfires in California. How do people start thinking about why actually use energy for? So we can actually start building energy infrastructure in our homes that we can take care of each other for. And right now in the state of California, electricity is being regulated by the Public Utilities Commission, which also means that it's practically captured by the industrial utility in the state of California. So when you do anything related to electrification or like electricity, you are going to fall into the rules of the Public Utilities Commission. And when we are busy trying to get people to reimagine our relationship with energy, and we keep getting sucked into advocacy instead of practicing co-governance, like Movement Generation, I'll quote them again, they said, if you're not prepared to govern, we're not prepared to win. And we keep practicing, what we keep doing is demanding and advocating, which is really important, but not enough time to practice co-governance with each other around everything, including energy. Even if we win the fight, we're not ready to co-govern, somebody else is going to take over. So we do projects like these mutual aid response in wildfire, to building much larger things like moving away from electricity and building thermal microgrid that is much cheaper than geothermal that we're hearing all around. We're looking at solar thermal for people to actually manufacture, build it, maintain it, and own it in their own neighborhood within their own block. And now we can produce things like clean energy jobs. We can create things like energy agency that's ran by the community, because now we have opportunities for people to engage with energy differently. And lastly, we're thinking about this thermal microgrid. Anything that can generate heat in a cheap price can come in, which then now we're thinking about closed loop greenhouses for urban agriculture. So think about this, we're trying to produce organic produce in our neighborhood efficiently using greenhouse. It generates heat. Most of the time you kind of dump it in the environment so it doesn't kill the seedlings. But what if we capture the heat, sell it as hot shower to your neighbor? That's the type of thermal microgrid that we're working on, so people can actually have a place to engage with each other, practice co-governance. And for us, that understanding our relationship with energy and have opportunities to co-govern is what we see liberation looks like, breaking us out of consumerism.
Thank you. Can I ask a follow-up question there?
Sure.
Sorry, let me go to the next person. So I'm just curious, back to the public education piece, which we already know public education is already in dire straits as far as like resourcing, et cetera. What challenges have you encountered as far as resourcing that part of your work, as far as like getting people what they need to do, sustaining that kind of education, getting them to the point where they're actually able to apply it? I'm just very curious about that.
Yeah, and I'll keep that short. I think the answer is, the biggest challenge is, of course, resources. There's just not enough investment into community capacity, engaging in energy in this way. Most investment you get, which is already not enough, is around people buying clean energy product like heat pump, electric vehicle, and solar panels, but not so, or changing your light bulbs, but not enough really understanding what our energy system is doing today, what is the history of our energy system that is related to stolen land. As I'm thinking about PG&E, literally remove the Maidu people, set up this power staircase of hydroelectricity that is bringing electricity down to the Bay Area, and that is the power system, the transmission line that is causing wildfire. We're talking about clean energy wildfire. And people don't talk about that. Not enough investment is going into that.
Okay. Thank you. Who would like to share? Ruth, Mariel?
Sure, I'll jump in. I totally agree with what Crystal just laid out really well. And I wanted to add that in Puerto Rico, we are, as I mentioned, constantly struck by hurricanes, part of Hurricane Alley, and we are looking for solutions, alternatives that address that vulnerability, that have to do with cutting dependence on transmission lines and siting these systems closer or on site, right? Mostly on rooftops, especially because of the limited land availability that we have, but generally just to not sacrifice more land for ecosystems and also communities. So not all renewables are sustainable. And so, for example, we've gotten a wave of projects, especially here in Southeastern PR, where big developers are proposing industrial scale, utility scale solar arrays. And the communities here are totally opposed to that kind of build out because it's not at all sustainable in the sense of our agricultural land. So there's an energy, water, food nexus involved here, and we want to go beyond just that singular goal of decarbonizing the electric system and actually make the system more decentralized, more democratized, and less dependent on fossil fuel imports, and the sort of the centralized system that we have now that's very much controlled by big private companies like the AES Corporation, like Quanta Services, like New Fortress Energy, etc. So I think energy liberation is breaking away from that traditional narrative that communities, that these things have to be done by big corporations. Energy is something that is exclusively within the realm of large business interests, and actually showing that communities can become energy literate, be part of the transformation that we need to survive. Because what we've seen after all of these hurricanes is really high levels of excess deaths, not just after Hurricane Maria, but also in 2022 after Hurricane Fiona. So yeah, if that is one of the main goals of the pilot projects that we're doing, and the civil society proposal is to empower local communities through this transformation to distributed renewable energy, mostly through rooftop solar and energy literacy, et cetera.
I'd like to jump in here. I think that one of the things that Crystal and Ruth just alluded to is not just public education in the sense of, public education, the way that we know it in schools, but education about in our communities. And what we have found is that, I'll just tell you one little story about a solar project. So New Energy Economy went to the county of Santa Fe. This is about 7 years ago. And we said to them, hey, look, we'll raise half the money. You find half the money in your budget somewhere. And we want to solarize one fire station. Well, we picked fire stations because firefighters are on the front lines of climate in New Mexico. Just last year, we had the largest wildfire in New Mexico's history. And so we did that. And, I have to just tell you that not only are firefighters often handsome and in, very attractive human beings, but they're also loved. They're not police, right? So you don't like the police who give you a ticket, or worse. I used to be a civil rights lawyer doing police brutality work. But these are firefighters who save lives, right? And so they were a little skeptical. They were like looking askance, like, really, does this solar work? Meanwhile, how many white papers have been written about the fact that solar works? Anyway, we solarized the first station about 7 years ago. It was so successful, when they stopped paying solar bills to the electric monopoly, the firefighters became advocates. So that's a part of the education right there. It's education in action, right? So this is not theoretical. This is not just for children in a school. Not that's meaningless, because it's super important to solarize every public school in the entire country, if you ask me. But after that solarization project in one fire station, the Santa Fe County adopted a resolution that is now almost completed to solarize every fire station in Santa Fe County. They became so proud of it, and they became advocates. So not only the firefighters, but actually county officials and county managers were like, hey, we're saving money on our bills. We are repurposing. Instead of paying money to our electric monopoly, they were literally putting money into firefighting saving equipment, and that's the kind of real community action.
Thank you for sharing that story. That's really inspiring.
For me, this kind of goes back to what Ruth was saying, but in Louisiana, we have hurricanes. And I remember after Hurricane Ida, our roads were blocked for about 3 weeks because the lines were knocked down by the storm. So we had the electrical poles on the roads, we had the wires all over. Thankfully, the electricity was off so that but even though they were off, you still have to be careful because it could be live. So it's really, in addition to everything we went through with the storm, including not having electricity for nearly 3 weeks, which is the longest that I've gone without electricity, it was just looking at the infrastructure and how damaging it was to just get around it. And what really stood out to me was that this was a system. How long have we been having electricity? And this is where the modern way of looking at it was just a pole with wires on it, knowing we're in like the belly of the beast when it comes to hurricanes. So that was an eye-opening experience for me. And at the same time, after the storm, I went to one of our parish council meeting, and the St. John the Baptist Parish Council, parish is a county for us, they congratulated the energy company, it's Energy Louisiana, congratulated us, like, we want to thank you for all the hard work you did, and you made sure to get the electricity back on after 3 weeks, and no, it was hard, and they got applauses. And they're the reason why we're in this situation. They get this, like, the clap on the back, when we are the ones enduring climate issue after climate issue. That's just the hurricanes. That doesn't count for the different storms where we're out of power. So just the attention that they get, and their sophisticated marketing that they have, but at the same time, we're the ones who are dealing with this infrastructure that doesn't work for us. It just does not work for Louisiana. So this alternate sense of energy is so important, and it's also important, as you all have mentioned, for that to be controlled by the community. I think this because no solution, as much as we believe in a solution, there's no solution that doesn't have an impact on that fence line community or that local community. Everything takes energy. Everybody has to endure something, no matter how much we think this is going to save the planet, and it will. What is it going to do to that local community? So having those local energy sources, is local grids, where the community can participate in upkeeping it, where they can get the jobs, they can see the immediate benefit. They're the ones that, even if they bear any type of ramifications from that, they at least are the ones who can monitor it. They can get the most benefits from that as well. So they can keep it within that loop, hopefully, and it will mitigate some of that damage. So I always think that just keeping it micro is important. I am from a community that is a free town, a freedmen's village, and there's many freedmen's towns around the country, but particularly in Louisiana. These free towns were founded by the formerly enslaved or free people of color who had essentially these little small micro communities all along the river, at least in the river parishes in Louisiana. And despite the fact that these streets were the communities were maybe about 2 or 3 streets, they were so micro to where they all had their own little systems going on. And they were independent, but they were all interconnected. To this day, we still refer to a street as Woodville or Willow Grove or Lineville, and it's just 2 streets. But there was so much power within those individual collectives and those micro communities. And I think I really would love for us to get back to that, because we can have these bases of power. So if one thing goes down, we can reach out to the other village. We can reach out to these other communities. I know indigenous communities in Louisiana and the Gulf Coast are creating these systems, and we're connecting with that. And we're trying to figure out, how do we communicate with one another through the internet? So we're not using the internet, but we have our own safe way of communicating, because when it all goes down. Before, and I end with this, I think this was seen as if you live off the grid, and that was someone living off the grid that was, I don't mean as with, a hippie, and they're eating granola, and they are bathing in a river or whatever, which I think are all lovely things. I admire all of that. But that is that personification when our communities, like a Black community, may not look at that and be like, oh, okay, that's where we want to go, right? Because of the culture sometimes. But this is really a necessity. This is what we need. It's this is protection for us. And it's not us being off the grid and just throwing away everything. It's really us empowering ourselves. one environmental justice advocate, Robert Taylor, from Concerned Citizens, says is there will be no man and a horse to rescue us. And it always sticks in my mind that there is no man and a horse to come and rescue us, so we really have to build that power and really rescue ourselves.
Out of curiosity, how many folks here work in climate or do climate? Okay. And so obviously we've all heard, there's a lot of demands within the climate space around, especially from national groups. I like that name.
Your jobs are all safe.
Right. Where, there's like a lot of like demands for a swift and just transition, right? We gotta do a clean sweep, we gotta do it quick, it has to happen now by 2030, blah, 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 blah. And sometimes I think inherently I start to get this sort of sense that it sounds a lot like an oil and gas executive. It's almost the exact same thing. It's like swift and just. We got to do it quick. We got to conquer. We got to do this. And so, not to add bias to the question, but I am curious. Do you guys agree with that theory? Is it possible within like a liberation lens to have a swift and just transition at like a large scale for renewable energy? Does that serve the community? Ruth and Mariel can go too.
I'll go.
Okay.
One of the things that I just filed literally this week was a mandamus action on behalf of 15 legislators. And what happened was, this kind of illustrates your question. So there was this neoliberal policy that was adopted that New Energy Economy fought against. It was called the Energy Transition Act in 2019. Oh, boom, we'll do it. We'll shower the corporations with money, and they'll drop a little bit of this and a little bit of that here and there, and everybody's going to be in the just transition, right? Well, one of the things they were supposed to do was to locate renewable resources in a Dene, that's Navajo community, right? That was like the one little crumb that the community was supposed to get when they closed down the coal plant. After giving PNM, the electric monopoly, $360 million for a plant that they were going to already close. It was just a crazy neoliberal blah. And it was all like, oh, it was landmark legislation. Oh, is this? Oh, is that? I was like, it's not going to work. And it didn't work. And so I am now representing 15 legislators in the Supreme Court against PNM for failing to put the renewable resources in that Dene community. It's a 95% Dene community, right? And the little crumb that they were promised, they didn't even do that. And so we are fighting to uphold a law that I was opposed to, but the little part that was supposed to benefit community didn't even happen. And so your question is very important because it deals with this contradiction. Move fast, have a just transition. They always co-opt our language. It's always about a narrative fight, right? It's always about greenwashing. And yet, where does the money, quote, trickle down to? So I think what Joe said is so critical. It's got to come from the bottom. It's got to be a fight for justice because, and if it takes a little longer, it takes a little longer, but then we survive together, And the thing is that when you are, what we're all saying, and it's fabulous that we're all women, what we're all saying is you got to take care of community at the same time as you're working on climate justice. Like they're absolutely interwoven. This idea about racial justice, community justice, economic justice, they're one and the same. It's these corporations that have gotten us into this problem in the first place, right? Has caused this climate. So we can't look to them to solve it. We know that they're robber barons. We have to work to save our community. That's what we have to do.
I'll jump in. I think that is a great question. I think it's a both and, because what we don't want is when we do see solutions, our government powers that be try to purposely stop that. And we've seen that happen in Louisiana and St. James Parish, which is a neighboring parish to me. There's a potential for a solar project, and now the council is voting, oh, we need to table this, we need more thought, which is good, but we know the reason why they don't want to necessarily move forward is because they want to use that land potentially for petrochemical build out. So if it's done in a way where they really are trying to find information, then yes. But if it's done in a way to impede the process, then that can be problematic. What I think when, especially working for me, part of our advocacy, because the plastic industry is connected so dearly with the petrochemical company, petrochemicals are the feedstock or oil essentially. What I find often is that a lot of energy can be spent of like, what can we create? What's gonna be the new plastic? What's gonna be the new safe plastic? And what can we do and how can we recycle it? And there is sometimes like there is energy to spend creating something, and there's also part of energy is stopping. Like really conserving energy is it's also something that's often, and what I would say to many of the researchers and experts in this field, when it comes to plastic, is like, we didn't ask you to reinvent the wheel. We just asked you to stop making it. And we don't want you to create this, all this energy is spent, all of this energy and time and intelligence is spent trying to correct something when the solution can just be to stop it. And so that's, a message that I always think about, like how can we just make sure we save time, or that's part of our ask, is that stopping where we can. Our communities too can be linked to these crazy sources of like, how can we get energy? We want, for example, when my community wants a gas station, they always like, we need more gas stations. Okay, forget the problem with oil and gas, but they want a gas station. So there's a lot of what we hear is, well, we need a petrochemical company to bring in the people, to get us enough people to get a gas station. We need enough people here to get a store. So they're making this whole loop. And I'm like, well, why don't we just work on getting the gas station? Why don't we just work on getting a grocery store? Why are we taking this big leap all the way around? Because we think these companies have the energy. They're the ones with the energy, and we need to get their energy in order to make the resources that we need. So I guess I'm looking at energy in more of an abstract way, but I just look at how all of these systems are connecting, and what we can do, as you were saying, with the narrative, to make sure that our energy isn't dependent on these people who just want to keep polluting us. And so we allow them to, because we're believing that they are the energy in order to make, to bring resources into the community.
I think Ruth wants to go.
Well, I'm not sure if we're gonna open up for other questions soon, so I want to be brief, but I think that what we're seeing in Puerto Rico is very similar to what people have mentioned, especially in Louisiana and California. So because we've seen this huge devastation of the electric systems that have led then to, the excess deaths and the allocation by FEMA of historic amounts of money, there are currently at least 19.2 billion with a B dollars allocated for the Puerto Rico electric system. And what is happening is that those funds are starting to go to the private companies that I mentioned to rebuild the centralized grid all over again. And that means transmission that comes out of mostly southern Puerto Rico, where the big power plants are here, crosses the mountain range, tropical forest, and into the San Juan metro area in northern Puerto Rico. And it perpetuates the FEMA and the Department of Energy are unfortunately complicit in perpetuating that kind of system. And sometimes it's substituted by the industrial scale solar installations instead of the fossil plants. But the impacts of those industrial scale installations are not being considered. So we know for a fact that when companies like AES in Virginia, they clear 4,000 acres of forested land to build a solar array called the Spider or Spotsylvania, this huge solar array that has implications for the climate. The forested area was providing us a service, and now it's barren, and of the implications include not only creating heat islands, but also displacing stormwater potentially into communities, which is what is happening in Puerto Rico, increasing flood levels, increasing the sediment load that discharges into our nearby bay. So that rapid push towards the continued centralized, even with the renewable, utility scale projects, does not really create a just transition at all.
I'll just jump in and say that it's very simple. Urgency breeds desperation. Desperation leads to false solution. And I think the swift thing that we absolutely have to do is to stop the harm as fast as possible. So big shout out to all the people who are fighting against fossil fuel. Those needs to happen as soon as possible. Coal, oil, LNG, everything needs to stop now. And we need everything we can to move to stop that as soon as possible. But in terms of dreaming for the future, we have to know our power and change our relationship in this society. Right now, our power is work hard and spend hard and take your weekend off so you can spend more money. That is our role, but our power, we are so much more powerful than that. So we have to understand that and understand what we can do with each other. I mean, Joe gave a really amazing example of relying on your neighbor to be resilient. Resiliency is based on the relationship, the strength of our relationship with each other, not the strength of this battery that you have in your own backyard. Yes, that's really important, but it's only as strong as our relationship with each other. And consumerism is not going to save us from the impact of consumerism just because we have a cleaner solution. We're not going to get out of that. We need to conserve, we need to reduce, we need to understand our power and understand that blindly buying stuff, even if it's cool and shiny and decarbonizing, is not going to get us out of there. If we keep having to produce new stuff, where are we going to get the resources to produce the new batteries and electric vehicle? I'm going to tell you it's going to be fossil fuel. So, and then the water usage, that's part of that. That's going to be more fossil fuel and more wildfire. So I'll just add that with.
It's a good segue, and I hope we have space for a couple of questions. But I know, here we go again. This year, Trump, Project 2025, I don't need to give the rundown there. I think we're good. It's Netroots. But I'm curious, with what we have forecasted and also what's happening now, because we know about the Chevron decision with the Supreme Court, and Project 2025 is still C3 that's going to keep pushing regardless of what happens in November, right? How are you thinking about pushing for renewable energy in the current political climate, but also past November as well?
I'll go. I was thinking about this last night and what happens if we have a presidency that is not, beneficial to our environmental concerns. And I thought it wouldn't be the first time. And it wouldn't be the first time the system failed us. And what did we do before? We kept going. Because the tools that we have in our toolbox, let's face it, they are dull. They make their tools and they work, but you have to saw in order to your dull knife to make it cut. So what other tools in our box do we have that we can sharpen right now, or that already are sharp? So I think like this, looking at these systems, especially the grid and different sources of energy like thermal, or other ways that we can counteract whatever else is happening. Because those are things that we can control. Yes, go out and vote. The environment is concerning. We all need to do as much as we can because it is scary. But it's been scary before, and we've endured. And so, like, we have other tools that we can use, and no matter what, if it goes our way, it doesn't. Eventually, it won't go our way. It won't go our way in this system. And what do we have as our plan B and our plan C to make sure that we can immediately engage when that goes down? So who do we need to pressure? There are companies and corporations out there who we can push and say, if you are part of this, I'm not gonna buy your product anymore. As you were saying, consumerism is what we're all into. So why don't we use that as one of our tools? If we can hit people in the pocketbook and we know that, then that is a weakness. And we can zone in on that and say, hone in on that, like how can we use that to benefit us? So it is scary at the same time. I think it's also an important time for us to start strategizing about what we can do when all hell breaks looser.
Any other thoughts there? I can open up the floor for questions.
I'll say, I just learned this at Netroots Nation, and one of the session that 7th Generation did a little, 7th Generation, the soap, dish soap company, did a survey to their consumer. I think it's about 1 million of them. And they learned that most people didn't even know there's a relationship between fossil fuel and climate change. That blew my mind. But if I thought about it, I was like, yeah, because what is fossil fuel? Most people don't even think about fossil fuel. So now, most people, of course, don't think about renewable energy. And if anything, they're hearing whatever it is that they're hearing from, like, oh, renewable energy is gonna steal my job, or whatever bad image they have. We can change that. I don't think we need to be so stuck on our own messaging that we have to, like, fight back on these correcting the keywords on, say, if somebody's attacking the Green New Deal, we have to say what the Green New Deal is good for. But how about grounded our values? I think as humans, we have much more shared values than we are different. I also learned from, I just learned recently, there's a difference. I don't think there's a left versus right. There is a Republican versus Democrat. Yes, there is, but I would really truly believe that there is people who believe in justice, believe in healthy communities, and people who don't believe in justice and healthy communities yet. So how do we actually recruit more people into our space by talking about our own values and be deep in it, have real conversation about what we care about, which is taking care of our own families and taking care of the future generation. I think most people care about that, no matter what side you vote for, and we need to keep having that conversation so we can change our relationship with each other and change our relationship with energy so that we can reclaim our power. And it doesn't matter who gets elected because we're only gonna be building power. That's how I see it. Yes, the election, yes, please go vote, but that is what we need to be focusing on.
I'll just say that I think the Democrats are going to try to take advantage of this and be more corporate and more militarist and more all the yucky bad stuff that we already dislike. So I think our position has to be just the opposite. We have to be bolder, bigger, and do what both Crystal and Joe said. We have to build power. We have to, but we have to do it via the community, with community, in community, and taking leadership from community. Building the capacity. You talked about we have to sharpen our toolbox, and that's one of the things that we have has atrophied in our society is courage, just straight up courage. People are just like, oh, they've given away their power, like literally, to make decisions, to become, to understand democracy, to, as you said before, govern. Like, these are things that we have to use and get back into and strengthen so that we can fight back. So the bigger, the bolder your position is with community.
Oh, I think that Puerto Rico, as a colony, as an unincorporated territory of the United States, is especially vulnerable to this Project 2025 and going back to a situation where basically the presidency manifests outright racism towards the residents of Puerto Rico, right? What we saw, for example, was the holding back of any kind of aid, especially after Hurricane Maria during that time. And that may happen again, right? So as others have said, as we've said before, that's all the more reason to make sure that the resources that are currently available are used in the public interest here. It's a historic amount of funding, and we're hoping that the current administration moves more in the direction of what are the civil society petitions here for the kinds of transformation that enables community empowerment and where energy is seen as an essential public service, as a human right, that the absence of which sometimes results in death and morbidity and aggravating of health conditions, and has really been one of the factors that have pushed people to leave the archipelago and move to the States and make this a very unviable place currently. And that does not need to be the situation. We can definitely imagine and work towards a system where people will want to stay and live and prosper in a very sustainable way here in Puerto Rico if the resources that are available are used in the public interest.
All right, thanks, y'all. We have like a few more minutes. I wanted to open up the room in case anyone wanted to ask a question. You're welcome to just stand up and vocalize. We're in a small room. Give a little bit of time. Any questions? Yes, go ahead.
Can we advocate for the next Netroots Nation and not have this conversation at 9 o'clock in the morning?
Period. Yes.
You guys are awesome. This has been a great conversation. More people need to be here.
Yeah, well, I appreciate all y'all coming at 9. I agree. Mariel and Ruth, they were just saying, can we advocate next year to, not have this conversation at 9 in the morning? Yes, yes. Anything else? Any other questions for our panelists? Go ahead.
Thank you so much. This is awesome. I'm out of Minneapolis, and there's some exciting work happening there too. And I'm just curious, how we might all be able to connect and build together.
Love it. Yes, we have a guest here from Minneapolis. Just wants to know how we can all connect and build together. I think. Go ahead.
Yeah, so great question. There has been an existing effort to make sure everyone doing energy democracy, where you met us here, but there's like 40 more organizations working together in the formation of Energy Democracy Project. And we launched this campaign called the REFOCUS campaign, which stands for Reimagine Energy for Our Communities, US. And it basically thread together, like what you hear today, stories from Alaska to Puerto Rico, to see what are the examples of future that we want to build for energy democracy, energy justice, and in a way that has a similarity, because we're all different environment, different political landscape, different culture, but how do we actually have the commonality so we can all see our shared struggle and how we can all stand in solidarity with Puerto Rico? Because like Ruth mentioned very well, it is a colonized place, and colonized and governed by our Congress, who is supposed to be accountable to us. So we have the power to do something to make sure the $17 billion gets spent in the right place when their people are already organized. So while in the meantime, we're trying to get the money, we're trying to get organized, they have both. And all they need is for us to be organized to make sure that gets built so that we can point at Puerto Rico and say, we want that. That is happening. And that's what we can do. So a big invitation to join the REFOCUS campaign. You can go to the website energydemocracy.us/refocus, REFOCUS, or just go to Energy Democracy. And also, we got zines. We have a lot of tools that's all co-created by practitioners like the panel you're hearing today to talk about this stuff that we're talking about in a way that actually also lifts up what you're doing, even if you're just thinking, and start to have these conversations so we can reclaim our own power.
All right, thanks y'all for the energy, the support, the great questions, the invitations to collaborate, the invitations to advocate for us. So yes, thank you all for being here. We're gonna go ahead and wrap up because I know the next session is coming in, but just wanna,
They have half an hour before we go.
oh,
Yeah, it's coffee now.
you think we can keep going?
It's coffee now.
Oh, it's
or-
coffee time.
Yeah, or we can just like hang out and talk
Yeah,
together.
yeah,
Yeah.
we can hang out and talk. I mean, are there any other questions or do you just wanna?
Especially for those online.
Okay.
Yes.
I have a question. Thanks for the great panel. My name's Whit. I'm curious, so much of this feels like us grappling with power over the big monopolistic, capitalistic, extractive utilities.
Uh-huh.
And I'm curious to hear people's examples of when they built the power to force them to change or to force some sort of shift. And I know, I feel like we heard a couple of them, but like concrete examples of like, yes, we beat them this time because of X, Y, or Z.
Cool. Did Ruth and Mariel, did you hear that question?
Yeah. I'll just say that one of the things that we also get like colonized by is their power, right? Just assuming that because they're big, because they're rich, because they have an army of lawyers, that we can't win. And the fact is you got to try. When this $8 billion merger happened, you know, everybody was just like, didn't want it. And then one after the next, they started settling. And literally a reporter said to me, you know, you're not going to win, Mariel. You know that it's a fait accompli. They have all the money. They were literally taking out full page ads every single Sunday in the major newspapers. That alone, like people were like, who does that in New Mexico? You know, and TV commercials and sponsoring gay pride and sponsoring the balloon fiesta. I mean, they got all the money. They got all the money. And we kicked their fucking ass. And we kicked their ass because we fought. We dug, you know, we dug deep and asked them for discovery. I won every single motion to compel in the case. But I never worked harder in my life, but we had a team of people, just people. And people said, we don't want this corporation. You know, they're a Spanish corporation, right? They have 3 green leaves as their motto, but they weren't green. They are mostly focused on nuclear and gas energy, you know, and they had a track record that they couldn't overcome. But it was really funny because they're a Spanish corporation. I was like, oh, recolonization in New Mexico again? You know, like, no, thank you. So despite all their power and all their money, it took people power and a lot of hard work by a lot of people. We did fun stuff. We did use social media, and there were zines and all these things that people make. And you know, and we won. We just it's so funny because just yesterday, after we won in the Supreme Court, we won in the Public Regulation Commission, then we won in the Supreme Court. And just yesterday, we won again against Avangrid. After we won, they wanted to erase history. They wanted to dismiss the case. I'm like, dismiss the case? No, no, no. You are not going to take away the final order in this case. Why? Because they want to go into Oregon and they want to go into the state of Washington and they want to buy up stuff there. And they don't like the fabulous opinion that we won here to be precedent. And I was like, no, 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 you can't do that. And no one fought again. No one fought again. And I said, that's crazy. We gotta respond to their stupid motion to dismiss the case. I was like, no, we're not dismissing the case. That final order is going to stand. And New Energy Economy won yesterday. Yesterday, we got the order. So, and this is like a 3-year battle. And some of the battles are 7 years, and you all know. And a lot of times our movements get that, I was talking about courage, but we also have to persevere, y'all. We have to persevere. We need to come together, build relationships, build them strong enough to persevere. And I just think that we can't let them say, oh, they're too big, they're going to win, and then we go home. No, we have to go big.
Yeah, so I just want to add, and I have to jump off very soon, that in these times of climate crisis, it's almost like no place is really exempt, right? One of the Diálogo Ambiental members recently went to visit a sister in southeastern Pennsylvania, and there was a power outage, a really extended power outage going on. And I think that something that Crystal mentioned about people at the community level, everyone can usually come to agreement about the need to have sustainable services and get empowered as to these things that are happening with more frequency. And so I think that that's the key, right? Doing that, and we all know, I mean, this is the Netroots meeting. We know that the grassroots community level work to empower and to bring in people that maybe traditionally have not been, like at the forefront of the environmental climate justice struggles, but because they are being impacted, may have more interest and motivation to, be part of these movements to transform our systems. And so with that, I'm sorry, I have to jump off now.
Thank you, Ruth, for joining us.
That's a good question. Yeah. I think we need to celebrate our wins.
Yeah.
More and share that. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, Ruth. We appreciate you being here. Everyone give a big
Right, everyone make a big round of applause and make some sound for Ruth
Yeah.
and